Ken Timmerman is a senior fellow at the America First Policy Institute and author of the Iran House, and George Moraitis is a former U.S. Navy submarine warfare officer and Florida congressional candidate. Great to have you all here. Let's start with you, Ken. I mean, you just heard Mike Carter's report there. They're trying to establish now this timetable for when this ceasefire, well, it's in place right now. But now, the longer this drags out, do you believe that this will benefit the U.S. or does it benefit Iran? We know Iran typically likes to drag these things out. This is traditional playbook for them.
Of course it is. And they do want to drag it out to a certain extent. The problem is they're oil wells, and they are very much under the gun with the oil wells. They only have so much storage left, maybe 2 days, maybe 3 days at Carg Island. When those storage tanks are full, they have to shut down their oil wells. This is a huge problem for them. This is why I believe that they will continue to fire on ships in the Gulf, that they will continue to seize ships in the Gulf. They announced this 2 days ago. I tweeted it out that night. I believe the IRGC, when they issue that type of threat, they are under the gun. They think they can drag it out, but they know that the economic gun is right at their temple.
Scott, I'd like to tap into your background in intelligence. Right now, we just got this report that was put out by a news organization that is linked to the Revolutionary Guard, and they're suggesting, kind of couched as a technology article, but they're suggesting that the undersea cable lines are fair game now, the things that connect the data. How do you assess that? And how do you, as an intelligence, with an intelligence background, take a look at articles that are put out by Iran and determine whether or not that is a real threat or they're trying to, pull you off in a different direction?
Well, remember that most everything Iran puts out, it is for the consumption of the domestic audience. They're constantly blasting out defiance because they really don't have the force to back it up. Now, there is precedent for cutting of underwater cables. The Russians have done it several times over the past several years in the Baltic. However, right now, wearing my Navy hat, the Iranian Navy does not have really the capability to do that anymore. With just speedboats, that's not the type of gear that you're going to be able to use to access those deep water cables. So I think, the U.S. Navy should be on guard for that. And it is potentially a serious threat. But I think right now, Iran is not really capable of carrying out that threat.
George, you're a former U.S. Navy submarine warfare officer. What concerns you about that Strait of Hormuz and these potential landmines there that could be detrimental? And do we have that type of technology to identify them and try to take them out?
We absolutely have the technology to take out mines. We just have to secure the strait. We have the most powerful Navy in the world, so it's not a question of capability. It's a question of will at this point. I think the president has shown incredible restraint, trying to give peace a chance. The Iranians continue to provoke the rest of the world by, again, closing the strait off. So at some point, it's going to get a lot more fierce than it is right now. And yes, we could definitely clear the strait. We could definitely that was our will to do that.
Ken, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, and it was this kind of a tit for tat going back on social media, where you would have one Iranian, higher up saying, we need to make a deal, and another one then putting out a message, a half hour later saying, I don't know what he's talking about. We definitely need to, keep it hard line. And so there was also an article that was published in Iran that suggested that there is some fracturing between the people who are in the senior leadership there. How does that impact us? Because we need to be able to know that who we're negotiating with can actually go back and get verification or an okay or yes, let's end this from somebody.
Yeah, I think the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guards, are like the Wizard of Oz. They're behind the curtain and pulling all the strings. They may not be in the forefront, but they are definitely there. Vahidi, the head of the Revolutionary Guards, believes that negotiations make them appear weak. They cannot appear weak because then they are vulnerable inside Iran. They are vulnerable in particular to the Iranian people. They see the missile and nuclear weapons capabilities as necessary for regime survival. those who we are calling moderates, and by the way, I don't accept that term at all. They're just slightly less hardline than the hardliners. But those who want to negotiate with us, like Kalibov, who, by the way, is also an IRGC general. But Kalibov and Pezeshkian, the president, want to negotiate. They believe that negotiations will mean regime survival. So that's the debate going on. How does the regime survive? Do they survive by negotiating, or do they survive by maintaining their missile and nuclear capabilities? My bet is on the IRGC. My bet is that these negotiations break down.
And I think that's very astute because, as you mentioned, they want to survive. Not just their country. They don't really care as much about that as their own. And if they give in and are seen as weak, they are vulnerable from their own people.
Yeah.
Scott and Ken, George, thank you very much for being with us. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Well,